until longer and didn't actually do anything.
Right. That's true, because it was all about the short run. It may be fixed in the short run, but once these bills start coming due, the interest alone is going to just destroy the economy.
Well, the interest, and then the fact that, I said this a little bit earlier, but the fact that they're not tearing these companies apart and making them a little bit more competitive. There's still these just colossal bureaucratic giants that are giving money to people who don't even necessarily do anything. They should be failing. The best way to make responsible executives and people who get responsible pay is to let them lose their job when they're not doing it.
Hold them accountable.
Exactly.
I would agree with that. Alex, when these first bailouts started becoming hot topics, I talked with you at length about it, and I had said, my philosophy is that if they're too big to fail, they're too big to exist. They need to just do what they did with the Bell companies for the phones and just break them up and just make them small companies, trust bust them, and let these people grow from there. Oh
yeah.
I don't like the fact that you're bailing these huge corporations out just so they can keep doing that. You made a great point. The best way to do it is let them fail, let them be held accountable, let them know that this kind of practice of what they were doing isn't going to work.
Yeah. All right. Hello and welcome back to Informavores. My name is Alex Schumann.
Ryan Jones.
And this is Marcus Rippentrop.
All right, here are a few headlines for the top of the hour. Now, a study by Harris Interactive, whoever that is, says Chicago is the most stressed city in America. A University of Iowa grad has teamed up with Conoco, Conan O'Brien's media company, to make a sitcom about what his life would have been like had he kept his post-college job at Walmart in Lamars, Iowa. Now, to go to the top box office numbers, Where the Wild Things Are came in at number 1 with $32 million. Number 2 was The Law-Abiding Citizen. And then number 3 was apparently The Incredibly Frightening Paranormal Activity at $19 million. Now, Marcus, you have our next topic.
Yeah, one thing, though, about Harris Interactive. It's a public market. It's a market research firm that does public opinions.
Okay,
so they do that, and then they're also a third. Their poll also counts for a third of the BCS standings. So that's how people would have heard of Harris Interactive.
Okay.
Not to, upstage or anything. I just wanted
to
know.
I would legitimately ask that question.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if you were being rhetorical or not. Anyway.
No.
So nearly a year ago, the top state officials were given the charge by Governor Culver to find ways to cut $62 million from the state budget. Now, this is a year ago before anybody knew that there's going to be such huge budget cuts. They came up with a list, and they were given to Governor Culver, right? Sounds fine. He was preparing to make a 1.5% across-the-board cut. Now, this was all done in the dark of the State House, so no... In the dark. Yeah, no lights, only candles. But it was behind closed doors. Nobody knew about it. They even kept the list away from not only the public, but the legislators who could have helped, take these and do something with them before, have preventative action.
Before across-the-board cuts.
Yeah, before 10% across-the-board cuts. So what do you guys think about that? I mean, should this list have been made known?
Yeah, I think it does. I kind of want to know the motivation Culver had for doing this in the dark.
I don't know. There was 153 cost-cutting ideas on it, and only 60 could not be carried out without the direct legislator action. So, for those of you playing at home, that's about a little less than half. A little more than half. Well, whatever, you know what I mean? It's about half.
The only reason I could think of was maybe they weren't lobbied by these small groups or by legislators saying, no, you can't cut that. That's my program. That's the only reason I could think that they would keep this in the dark.
But I think that his job as the governor is to be honest with people. And I'm a big fan of transparency, and I think he should have come to not only the public but the legislature and say, look, here's what we see happening. We have a forecast for a year, for 5 years, and we see huge budget shortfalls. Could you help my top officials make this list? Not necessarily act on it. Like I'm not arguing that whether they should have acted on any of this or not, but I think the public should have been part of this. And maybe you have another year. I mean, if we're at this point a year from now, having that had happened, we could have had already made some cuts, and maybe the 10% across the board cut wouldn't have been needed at this point.
What's also really shady in this regard is Governor Culver, when he was announcing all these cuts, also talked about how we needed a new system to foresee these kind of things, and we needed a new system to kind of plan ahead for fiscal years, and apparently they missed all these budget shortfalls, but it sounds like he knew that they were there to some degree. I mean, he probably didn't know that we were going to be $1 billion short.
Right.
Because that's tax revenue. And that's mainly what he's talking about when he talks about we need a better way to predict that. But I think it's really odd that he would keep this quiet. And I mean, last November, he asked for $40 million in cuts. And I'm not sure why he didn't use this as his reasoning. He didn't really tell anybody. Nobody knew. And nobody knows still, even after this is out, what of those ideas have been implemented, what's going on. It's just really odd.
Do you think that he did it because he wanted to maybe not look bad and just say, hey, I'm going to cut a bunch of your money? Because keep in mind, 2010 is an election year. Do you think he wanted to try? I mean, this is getting kind of beyond me into like conspiracy area. But I mean, what do you think of the idea that he's doing this, to try and take a backdoor to balancing the budget? So what didn't become, maybe he was trying to be preventative and try to keep it from being a huge hot button issue, which it now has obviously become. Or do you think that he was just doing that because he didn't want the public to worry? That could be another. I'm just throwing out possible suggestions.
I think he was just doing it so the public didn't worry. I don't think he's that backdoorish.
Yeah, I don't get the interpretation that. I mean, I just don't know. I think it's so odd. But I assume
rather sketchy.
I have to. I mean,
that's the only reason I throw something like that out there is that it's why
just
would
so
you? I mean, it's
strange.
Not like he said come to his top officials and be like, look, find me things I'm going to kind of find me possible solutions. I mean, what's the worst that could have happened if the public would have known?
Well, heaven forbid he had just said, oh, we could do this, and this would cut things from the budget.
Right.
This would cut expenses.
And I'm sure the legislator had
so odd.
Great ideas, too. I mean, a lot of the legislators are just like, look, we could have been a year ahead of ourselves. And right now, had we had this list, if you could have just explained to us that there was going to be this shortfall, that there was going to be things that needed to be cut, we would have happily made those cuts a year ago and be more prepared to weather the storm now.
Well, you can't say that we would happily have done it, but you could say that we would have probably implemented some of them. And we might have implemented, it sounds like they implemented parts of it, and we just didn't know. There was no word going on, and which is just even, if I haven't said this enough, it's odd. So I just don't even, I don't understand why, because it also would have been a very nice, if it doesn't make sense politically, because this would have been something that would have been very bipartisan. Yeah. It would have made him look really good to both parties.
Well, and as I mentioned it's the 2010 election, he could have said, look, I the man for the job, because I can look 2 years in the future and say, look, there's a budget shortfall coming. Let's make repairs for it now. But now it's only going to hurt him in his reelection bid, because people are going to say, look, this guy tried to do things through the back channel and make sure that you guys don't know anything about it, and he's not prepared enough as a leader to make sure that the public is involved in this process. And I think that the Republicans, especially Branstad and Vanderplatz and Rand, are just going to jump on this and just keep pounding this into the ground. And this is going to hurt him in 2010. I really think it is.
Yeah, I just find it really strange they kept all the legislators in the dark. I just don't see the reason behind that.
I mean, because I'm sure they had some idea, or input or anything, especially because only 60 of the 153 could have been done by him. So that means the vast majority of them had to be done by the legislator.
Yeah.
So it's like making a list of things you can't do for this. This doesn't make any sense. I can't figure out why he did that.
It's not going to help him. It's definitely not going to help him.
To me, it kind of sounds like this something that happened like in the corner of a room with a couple officials and just happened on a whim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not quite sure how well orchestrated this was. If maybe it was just something that the staff was working on. It doesn't sound like it was some massive movement by the governor to change all these things. It doesn't sound. I mean, it's not like Nixon-esque kind of backdoor stuff. This is just something that it sounds like maybe the staff started to implement, and he said, "Yeah, that sounds like good. We need to be shaving things. We need to be shaving down the spending." So
I think it might have been just as been used as a preliminary tool for him to say, let's make a huge list now, and then let's whittle it down from there over the next year. So I guess that's one way you could spin it, that he's in a good light. So I don't know. We can all agree that he should have released this list and let the public know that there's possible problems down the road.
Agreed.
Yes. All right. Now we're going to go into our next topic. And this is also very strange of politicians to do.
But funny.
Yeah. What was happening is on the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives, there was a lot of disagreement between, here, I'll just read hold on a second. All right, so Government Reform Chairman Ed Towns changed the locks to the Oversight and Government Reform Committee chamber, so